We've got weapon refines for Fallen Ike, Nemesis, Apotheosis Anna, Summer Selena, and Julian, and this is going to be my builds guide and unit review of them. So Fallen Ike is definitely one of the more anticipated weapon refines, and he did have distant counter built in this weapon, and he also had spectrum unity built in. So back in those days, it put his ceiling much higher than a lot of the other sword infantry units because he could stack up the unity skills. And then we got Legendary Male Robin, who could stack another layer of unity, and that could definitely be done nowadays, but it's not really as strong because of the ploy status that is out there. But still, the spectrum unity is going to be staying in his refine and is very useful. Now with this weapon refine, he's able to get +8 to all of his stats in the combat, and he also gets the Null Guard, which allows him to easily retaliate back with Mayhem Ethers. And he also gets 7 flat damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the Brave hits, and he also gets the full damage reduction piercing. So they really want you to use him with Mayhem Ether, and that's why they also have put special jump -X before his first attack. Now keep in mind, this is before his first attack, and this is only going to be given to him if he runs a damaging special, which is again going to be Mayhem Ether. So this is kind of reminiscent of Young Ike, where he gets 50% of his max special cooldown count as the special jump. So he gets 2 cooldown out of that. And then by running Darting Breath, Sacred Seal, or by running the Pledge skill, he's able to retaliate back with Mayhem Ethers, which are going to be piercing the damage reduction of the enemies because of the Null Guard effect that this refine has got. So this is a pretty nice weapon refine, as it pretty much has Laguz Friend 4 built in it. I mean, it's more of a Laguz acquaintance at this point because it is not to the degree of Laguz Friend skill itself. You could still run that skill. And even though he's not going to be as insane of an Omni tank like Emblem Ike, he can still stack up a lot of stats because of the spectrum unity built in this weapon. And he does have the aspects of Emblem Ike with the flat damage reduction and stuff like that, but he definitely wanted like 1 or 2 extra effects that really would have made him a lot better. And there are a few things that he's kind of missing, but he can still work out with this. And if you love running Mayhem Ether, then this is probably the best refine you could have asked for. But if not, then this weapon refine definitely leaves something more to be desired. And if you're going to be running him in the modern times, then you could try and give him the tier 4 version of his Thought Bee and Slotsy skill in Repel 4 and Attack Speed Oath 4. And Attack Speed Unity is pretty much going to be one of the best slotty skills that he can run on him because he already has the Spectrum Unity in his weapon. So this way you're able to stack up a lot of stats, and that does help when you have this kind of damage reduction piercing based on speed. And Darting Breath is going to be a Sacred Seal you can run so that you can always retaliate back with Mayhem Ethers and pierce the damage reduction of the enemy. And if you're trying to optimize this build a bit more, then Attack Speed Pledge is going to be a Slotsy skill you could run. And Spurn 4 could also be run for its true damage, but ultimately all of that damage reduction is completely pierceable, so you definitely have to watch out for that. And if you're going to be running him in Aether Raids offense as an Omni tank, then he can run Null Counter Disrupt in his Slotsy. And Breath of Life 4 is basically the best new Slotsy skill for any kind of Omni tank because it gives you a counter against the pre-combat damage, it gives you that healing, and even if you're not going to be in the combat yourself, it gives the healing to the allies in 2 spaces. So he can run Breath of Life himself, and unlike Emblem Ike, it is not going to be all that free from the opportunity cost because he's going to be missing out on the breath effect. And that's why you could give him the Rally Spectrum support from Brave Male Robin or the Special Charges support from Young Minerva or Na, which is going to be helping him retaliate back with Mayhem Ether. And even though he already has the full damage reduction piercing and the flat damage reduction, you can still run Laguz Friend 4. Now it might seem a bit weird with the synergy with his weapon, but ultimately the redundancy and the overlap is not a big deal because you get that flat damage reduction that is ultimately most valuable when you're going to be tanking. And that helps you with Breath of Life 4. And unfortunately, there's no speed defense unity at the moment of making this video. So that's why you could run defense res unity so that he can stack up his defense for getting that flat damage reduction with Laguz Friend. And Laguz Friend gives you that extra flat damage reduction which stacks up with his weapon refine, and it also gives you more true damage. So it also helps you do a lot more damage with Mayhem Ethers, which is going to be having good synergy with Laguz Friend because it is a 4 cooldown special, and he can still retaliate back with it because of the special jumping of Laguz Friend and also his weapon. Mayhem Ether is good and all, but it's no godlike reflexes, and that's why you could run it with Emblem Marth and have it as a 2 cooldown special. And keep in mind that there's no special cooldown requirement for defensive specials with Lagoo's Friend, and you're going to be triggering godlike reflexes because of the special jumping of Lagoo's Friend, and you stack up a lot of unpierceable, a lot of flat damage reduction, which is ultimately going to be the aim to function as the best Omni tank, because if you run a lot of the pierceable damage reduction, then you're going to be susceptible to a lot of the meta nukes, and this is pretty much your way of excelling at the Omni tanking role. So the slaughter skill is quite expensive, but it does work in the enemy phase for giving you the flat damage reduction against the special triggers of the enemies. And Lagoo's Friend and Breath of Life 4 are pretty much going to be the tanking combo that you can run on any kind of tank, and it definitely works out on Fallen Ike with this kind of refine. Like I said before, there is a bit of overlap with the weapon refine and Lagoo's Friend, but ultimately it doesn't matter if you're getting the job done as a tank and you're living through the hits of the enemies and you're just killing all of them. You do need Emblem Marth if you're going to be running him with Breath of Life 4, which is going to be the best slot skill for an Omni tank. You can even run Attack Speed Unity if you don't really care about the flat damage reduction against the specials, so you can just stack up even more stats, but I just had to show it because it's technically an option for him at this kind of max investment. I didn't think I would say this, but I think that Summer Selena has won the Weapon Refinery badge because she has got such a stacked Weapon Refine even though she's not that recent of a unit. So her weapon Exotic Fruit Juice did give her +3 attack, and now it also has Dealt Speed Resistance built in the weapon, so you don't really need to run the lull effect anymore with the slot B, and you can just run some other slot B options. She also had this rain effect in the combat, but now it has been expanded to 3 rows and 3 columns centered on her, so she debuffs the foes in that range for -6 speed and resistance debuff, which is really good for the support, and she also gets true damage based on 15% of foes attack, and to herself and the allies in 2 spaces she's able to give out the +6 attack and speed buff and the Hexblade status, which is good for the support, but I think much better support is definitely coming from her debuffing, which she's going to be doing on the nearest foes in 5 spaces and the foes in 2 spaces of them. So she has got the splash debuff of -7, speed and resistance debuff, and also the flash status. So if you're not Emblem Ike, and if you don't have null counter disrupt on your tank, then you're not counter attacking back to your cav line. So that gives her a position to be run in Aether Raids defense, and that is going to be making her pretty much like Yanungagap but a tome version. She also provides the speed and resistance debuff with her rain effect and also gives the visible buffs. And she herself, even though doesn't have the insane stats of the modern nuke, she's still able to function with this weapon in the combat, and for that she also debuffs the foe in the combat for another -5 speed and resistance, and then she has got full null follow-up built into this weapon. So this is going to be working when you've got the flash status on the enemy and you can get the null follow-up effect and double the enemy and just be really annoying. So the supportive nuke aspect of Summer Selena is really good, and I kind of like how they have been making these kinds of weapon refines for the seasonal units like Summer Mia and now Summer Selena into this kind of supportive role. So it allows them to compete with the modern nukes but also support your team, which is really helpful not only for limited hero battles, arena assault, but also in the competitive game modes like Aether Raids defense. If you just want to run her on a budget, then you can give her Desperation, which is going to be having good synergy with the chip damage she gets from the Push 4 skill, and it also works really well with the full null follow-up built in the weapon. And Savage Blow can be the player phase skill that she can run and just stack up the offenses with Blade Session Sacred Seal. You can also give her some of the more expensive skills with Rearmed Reinhardt and also Flared Sparrow from Brave Galvik, so this way you're able to get the pre-combat damage. And Fortress 4 is going to be giving you that minimum Canto 1, so that way you can set up the Pathfinder with Defense Rest Smoke 3, because a lot of these skills are not going to be having good synergy with the Weapon Refine that are available for a ranged cavalry unit, and she doesn't really want it. That's why these are going to be some of the better options. And if you want to run her in Aether Raids defense, then she could be run with the tried and true combo of Flared Sparrow and Occultist Strike, even though it is not as strong anymore against the Breath of Life tanks, but still it is going to be annoying enough, and you can run Fatal Smoke 4 as he slots his skills, so this way she's able to contribute towards your cav line or flyer line or just a big threat range team with her rain debuffs and her visible buffs, and she's going to be annoying with that flash status unless you've got the latest Omni tanks which have null counter disrupt built in their weapon. And finally, if you want to run her with Fortress Echo and you want to run a different slot B skill, then Desperation 4 could be run against the Null Counter Disrupt tanks. So you can run Ruptured Sky with Emblem Heroes as a 1 cooldown special that you could trigger on your double with Desperation 4, and that is something she can trigger because of being a cavalry nuke. She pretty much has all of these slot B options with this build, with the Fortress, with the Dull effect, with the Null follow-up that she can get, and now Desperation 4, which she can also run. Nemesis has got a refine to his Dark Creator sword. It did give him +3 defense and it still does, but for some reason the text is mixed with the other text now. And he also gets extra stats to his attack speed, defense, and resistance in the combat, and this can go up to all the way 17. So he can function as a stat ball depending on the number of allies with HP greater than or equal to 75% times 3 and then added with 8. So that's pretty much how he can get the extra stats in the combat, and he wants to keep his allies healthy. And he also has the damage reduction in the combat and also the AoE damage reduction. So this is going to be higher on the first combat on both phases, and in the subsequent combats it is going to be a bit lower. So the max it could be is 75% damage reduction, and the lower is going to be 45% damage reduction, which is definitely not that bad. But nowadays we have a lot more damage reduction piercing, but still this damage reduction against AoEs is quite valuable as many of the tanks don't really have it, while Nemesis is still going to be having it. He also gets special cooldown +1 on both enemies' attacks and his own attacks, and he also has guard effect built in this weapon refine, so he pretty much has special fighter as an effect. And then after the combat he's able to heal up 7 HP, so that helps him as a tank. So overall this is a decent weapon refine, but definitely could have been a bit better if he had 1 or 2 extra effects, because he is missing guaranteed follow-up attack as a slower unit, which he really needs. So if you're going to be building him up or just updating his build, there are 2 ways of going about things. The first way is running Gambit, and Gambit is not as good as it used to be before because of the damage reduction piercing and with the need of running an actual low cooldown special. But still, because Nemesis doesn't have -1 special cooldown in his weapon, we can use that to our advantage and get that 50% damage reduction stacking with the damage reduction he has got in his weapon. And this is also going to be giving you that true damage, so it does help. But because he doesn't have a guaranteed follow-up attack, you could run Critter Post Sacred Seal. And if you are going to be doing that, then you can run Distant Bonus Doubler and a Slot A and fully embrace being a stat ball. So that does help, and Panic Smoke is also going to be another thing for having that stat swing in your favor. And the second way of running Nemesis is by making him a one-shot tank. So because he has got a lot of attack and because he can run No Quarter and retaliate back because of the special cooldown charge in his weapon, you can run No Quarter with Emblem Heroes as a 2 cooldown special. And Attack Defense Bulwark 4 can be the slot B skill for giving you some healing, and the Super Obstruct effect, and you can run a Unity skill in the slot A and run Distant Counter Melee as the Sacred Seal instead. You could also run the new Attack Defense Finish 3 Sacred Seal, but if you want to get the Distant Counter, then this is going to be an option. And No Quarter is going to be giving you that damage reduction piercing, which he really needs against a lot of the nukes that have so much damage reduction nowadays. And that's not something he gets out of the Gambit build, and that's why I kind of like going the No Quarter route and running it with him, even if, you know, Attack Defense Bulwark gives you the pierceable damage reduction. But ultimately, if you want to have some unpierceable damage reduction, then Lagu's Friend 4 is going to be the option, which cuts his damage reduction in half in his weapon, which definitely stings. But then again, it's going to be a trade where you are going to be getting that flat damage reduction based on his defense, which is pretty high. And you also get the true damage and the special jumping, which allows him to retaliate back with Ignis with these special charges in his weapon. So Ignis is going to be doing a lot of damage, and it is going to be giving you the full damage reduction piercing, and you are still going to be having that AoE damage reduction that is not going to be getting reduced by Lagu's Friend. So that helps you in tanking. And Breath of Life 4 is again the Omni Tank skill that he can run nowadays, but it is especially good on Nemesis because he doesn't want his allies to be at low HP, and giving the support to his allies is also going to be helping him get the most out of his weapon's effects. Apotheosis Anna gets a pretty nice weapon refine, and she's definitely going to be living up to her name now that she has got this refine. So it did give her +3 speed, and now it also gives her 7 HP healing post combat, and her warping to the allies in 2 spaces has been upgraded to 2 spaces. So she can have much better warping now, and in the combat she's able to get +5 attack and speed and +4 defense and resistance. She also is able to give the status effects to her allies in 2 spaces, depending on the allies that are present in 2 spaces of her. So if there are 1 or more allies, then she can give herself and the allies in 2 spaces the Canto 1 status, and if there are 2 or more allies, then she's able to give out the dot status. Now, we have got a lot of piercing, so the value of the dot status is not that high, but still it is going to be a pretty nice supportive effect that she can easily give out to her allies, and she also gets to enjoy these effects for herself. And this definitely ties into the stat stacking that she can do with her weapon refine. So she can get extra stats in the combat depending on the total number of bonus status effects present on her times 2 plus 4. So it does have a cap compared to something like White Wind Bow Plus, and this is going to be max 12. So she wants more status effects on herself, and she already gets access to 2 of them with this weapon, and then you can run the Slotsy skill or the Attune skill to just fulfill that requirement. And she also has null penalties to all of her stats. So if you were running a Unity skill on her, it is useless now, which is definitely not that good, but it does help her in the long run with the other slotty options that she has got. And finally, it also gives her true damage based on 15% of her speed. So overall, Apotheosis Anna is much better now with her mobility and with the support that she can provide, and she can definitely stat stack because of the weapon refinery that she has got, and just get a lot of stats from the visible status effects that she can easily stack up on herself. I don't really care too much about the dot status, but Canto 1 is always going to be helpful, but still there's a lot of Canto control out there, which can be annoying if you're running some kind of ranged unit, as their Canto is going to be getting stopped in the tracks. But as a melee unit, at the very least you're going to be getting Canto 1. So if you're going to be building her up after this weapon refine, you could try and run the prime skill, which is not really as good as it used to be because there are a lot of units who can snatch up your visible status effects, but still this can be self-sufficient if you run infantry null follow-up for as her Slotsy skill. So the order status from the null follow-up skill is a bit redundant with her warping, but still it's a status effect that she can get to get more stats and also activate the prime skill, and it also gives the null follow-up to herself and the allies, which doubles down on her supportive aspect. And if you want to double down there, then you can run her as a ruse support unit with attack speed ruse. So this way you can debuff the enemy and support your allies and pretty much function with the prime skill with all of the visible status effects. Battle Astra could be run as the special, but Moonbow can even work on a budget. If you're going to be running more of a combat oriented build, then Godlike Reflexes is going to be a must have with Emblem Marth. So it becomes a 2 cooldown special, which you can pre-charge with buffer for, and you can run attack speed finish for to get the healing and the true damage. And attack speed pledge is going to be giving you another status effect which helps towards your weapon refine. So the special charges from attack speed pledge is going to be helping you loop Godlike Reflexes, and it's definitely a build you can run after stacking up a lot of speed with this weapon refine. And for getting distant counter, instead of running the prime skill, you can run distant counter melee and still get the benefits out of the finish skill. If you want to go more of the player phase route, and if you don't want to tank in the enemy phase with Godlike Reflexes, then Gale Force could be an option. So with Emblem Marth, it becomes a 4 cooldown special, and Flash Barrow is going to be helping you trigger that a lot easily, which you can get from Attune Nino, and you can also get Speed Defense Tempo 4 at the same time, and you can also get the null follow-up effect out of the Infantry null follow-up 4 skill. So this way she's able to function in the player phase, go in with her warping, and then retreat with the Canto, and she's also able to get the extra action from Gale Force. So this is a more aggressive build that you can go for. And if you're a big Anna enthusiast, then you can try and run Lagoo's Friend and Attack Speed XL, which she's able to use compared to a lot of the infantry units much better because of the warping that she's able to get. So even in the player phase, it is something that she can make use of. But this is more for the enemy phase, and as it is, you're going to be getting the full null penalties from her weapon and the healing. So if you want to get the flat damage reduction against the enemy specials, then it can be an option. And Breath of Life 4 is again the Omni tanking option that has already appeared for the 3rd time in this video. So it already shows you how good of a skill this is, because any kind of Omni tank wants it, and especially a supportive tank like Anna definitely makes an amazing use out of this skill. The final refine of this batch is going to be Julian, and he still retains his effective damage against cavalry foes, and he still has the Hardy Bearing built in the weapon, which is Definitely a bit rare for a preferred weapon. And now with this weapon refine, he's able to get +8 to all of his stats in the combat. He also gets true damage based on 20% of his speed, which is a bit higher than what we usually get. It is usually 15%, but he gets a bit more true damage, which is going to be helpful with his attack stat. And then he gets 30% damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the brave hits. And he has got the Omni-Foe buff stealer effect, which is definitely a bit weird with the lull skill built in his kit, which you would have to take off because it doesn't have good synergy with this kind of Omni buff stealer. So you're going to be depending on the foes to have any kind of visible buff, and if they have the buff, then you take that for yourself and also debuff the foe. He also gets special cooldown charge +1 per attack, so this way he can use lethality a lot easily. And then finally he has got 7 HP healing post combat, which seems to be the trend with a lot of the weapon refine. So it is a mixed bag of a lot of different refinery effects, but he's not going to be excelling in any kind of department because he cannot really run Vantage, even though he has got effective damage because of the Hardy Bearing effect. And in the player phase, he doesn't really function as the best nuke. And in the enemy phase, he's not going to be the best tank, but he does a bit of everything where he's going to be spreading himself thin. But still, if you really like him quite a lot, then at least you don't have to give him any kind of arcane dagger, and this refine would do. So the main way you're going to be using him is in the player phase by initiating combat and just stacking up the offenses. So you can get attack speed finish 4 and the oath 4 skill from the divine codes, and speed defense tempo is going to be good with the special charges of his weapon. So this way you can trigger lethality on your double, and if you want to run physical null follow-up in his thought bait, then lethality could be a 2 cooldown special with Emblem Marth and Time Pulse 4, which you can trigger on your double even against the guard foes. And if you are someone who wants to keep his close foil build intact and wants to go in that route, then you could run close bonus doubler and run Ignis with Lagoose Friend and retaliate back with it and do a lot of damage and also pierce the damage reduction of the enemy. You can click the link on the screen right now to check out my breakdown of the midpoint banner, and make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because I wish YouTube sub boxes would show my videos as many times as Breath of Life 4 showed up in this video. So with that, still see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.